Hi, today's lesson is all about surveys, experiments, and observational studies. There is a lot of reading and a lot of writing involved, so try your best to follow along. We're going to go through this as best we can. Okay, so starting with statistical research. It takes various forms depending on whether the purpose of the research is to measure a variable in the population to see if there is evidence of an association between two variables, or to determine whether one variable actually influences another variable. Okay, so our first example says, suppose a graduate school researcher is considering 3 studies related to math and music. One study involves asking a random sample of high school students in a large school district whether they listen to music while doing math homework. A second study involves asking a random sample of students at a large university whether they are majoring in math and whether they also play a musical instrument or sing. A third study involves a group of adult participants where half will be randomly assigned either to listen to classical music for 15 minutes before taking a logical reasoning test or to listen to white noise for 15 minutes before taking the same test. So if you look at question A, it says which study appears to look for an association between two variables without actively manipulating either one. So think about it. Which one is not going to have an effect on the outcome, right? Which one are we just looking at to see if there is a relationship between the two? So in this case, we're looking at one that asks a random sample of students at a large university whether they are majoring in math and whether they play a musical instrument or sing. Okay, so that would be the second study because we're just looking to see if they're majoring in math and if they play a musical instrument or not. We are not trying to prove anything in terms of this study. So the variables are whether the student has mathematical ability and musical ability. Okay. Okay, study B says which study appears to be looking for evidence that one variable actually influences another variable. What are those variables and which one is manipulated to see if it influences the other? Okay, now we already did study 2. Study 2 just looks for an association. Study number 3 assigns half of the participants to listen to classical music and half of the participants to listen to white noise. So there's definitely something going on where we're looking for an effect, right? To look for an influences. So the variables in this case would be the type of sound being played and the listener's performance on the logical reasoning test. Now we were also asked to identify which one is manipulated to see if it influences the other. In this case, it's the type of sound that is being played, right? Either they do amazing while they listen to a classical music, or they would do amazing if they listen to white noise. So we're looking to see which of those would have a bigger impact on the same test that these participants took. Okay. And example C says which study appears to be simply measuring a variable in a population and what is that variable? Using process of elimination here, we already looked at study number 2. We already looked at study number 2 at 3. That leaves us with study number 1, okay? So in this case, we're looking at the one that asks high school students who listen to music while doing math homework, but cannot determine whether listening to music has any influence on learning math. When surveys are conducted, there are different types of errors that can occur. So let's go ahead and look at the errors in surveys. First of all, a survey measures characteristics of interest about a population using a sample selected from the population. A sample needs to be representative of the population in order for the measurements obtained from the sample to be accurate. Random sampling is generally the best way to ensure representation. Okay. Now, even when random sampling is used, a survey's results can still have errors. Some of the sources of errors are biased questions. The wording of questions in a survey can influence the way people respond to questions. Survey questions need to be worded in a neutral, unbiased way. right? So I can't walk up to you and ask you, um, hey, the Dodgers are the best baseball team, right? Why can't I ask you that? Well, first of all, I'm telling you what team to root for, right? If that makes sense. I'm pushing it on you to say, yes, they're the best team. Okay, so that would be an example of biased questioning. The second one is interviewer effect. If an interviewer asks the questions in a survey, the person being interviewed may give inaccurate responses to avoid being embarrassed. So, interview effect, if I were to ask you, hey, I'm the best teacher, right? Well, you're more likely to say yes because I am pressuring you into talking about me as your teacher or as a teacher. Okay, so that would be interviewer effect. Another example would be if you have a job, your boss asking, hey, you like your job, right? They're pressuring you to answer yes because you don't want to feel like your job would be at risk. Okay. And the third one would be a non response. Some people may be difficult to contact, or they may simply refuse to participate once contacted. If non response rates are higher for certain subgroups of a population, then those subgroups will be underrepresented in the survey results. So picture a survey happening at the high school. Okay. Let's say the survey gets a lot of no responses from freshmen. Well, because a lot of freshmen aren't answering the survey, right, their vote or their opinion would be underrepresented when it comes to the population of the high school. We would have sophomores, juniors, and seniors answering the question, but we would hardly have the opinions of freshmen. So, for example, one, it says explain the results of each survey or why the results of each survey are likely to be inaccurate, and then suggest a way to improve the accuracy of the survey. For A, it says the owner of a business conducts interviews with a random sample of employees to have them rate how satisfied they are with their jobs. Well, when you look at this question, who's conducting the interview? The owner of the business is conducting the interview. And then he's asked them to rate their satisfaction of their jobs. Okay. So in this case, because the interviewer is the owner, the employees will not feel comfortable answering those questions. Okay. When it comes to cases like this, being pressured into answer that you like your job or that you're satisfied with your job, especially by the owner, is likely to give a false response, right? You are not going to sit there and tell your boss that you hate your job because they will think of you as an inadequate employee, okay? They will think you are not efficient and they might think that you are not doing your job correct. So, interviewer effect has to do or has a lot to do with the way people respond to surveys. A better survey for this case would be a neutral interviewer, right? Somebody that's not the owner, possibly even bringing in somebody that does not work for the company just to conduct the surveys. Or, secondly, allow them to respond anonymously. The boss can still ask, right? But in this case, we would have, for example, a box where you could simply deposit your response and not put your name on the response. Okay, that would be a great way to conduct a neutral survey. All right, example B says in a random sample of town residents, a survey asks, are you in favor of a special tax levy to renovate the dilapidated town hall? All right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the response to this one, write it down, and then come back and see what the answer is for this one. All right, so in this question, um, I mean, you could have a lot of different responses, so don't think this is the only right answer. But to begin with, dilapidated. That's a big word. Not a lot of people know what dilapidated means, okay? The word dilapidated means that it is run down, that it is falling apart. So, by using the word dilapidated, they are suggesting that it is about to fall apart, right? It's in despair. So, this one would make people seem that renovation or make people think that a renovation is urgently needed and that they need to donate the money or not donate or increase that tax levy to renovate the town hall.